Aloha and thank you for tuning in to This Is Now. I'm Dylan Ancheta in the H&N Digital Center. We begin again with international news today as Israel's army's chief says troops are close to destroying the Hamas military system that existed in northern Gaza. Calls for ceasefire are continuing to grow louder. Skylar Henry has the latest from Washington.
The Israeli military says troops in Gaza recovered the body of one of the hostages seized by Hamas. Her remains found in a building near Al-Shifa Hospital. Soldiers have been combing through the hospital for 2 days and say they found a tunnel and weapons, as well as supplies in this MRI room.
There is an AK-47, there are cartridges, ammo, there are grenades in here, of course uniform, and all of this was hidden very conveniently, secretly behind the MRI machine.
Hamas denies the allegations. A spokesman in Qatar saying Israel's goal is to destroy Gaza's hospitals. CBS News has learned Israel is considering a proposal that includes a 3 to 5 day ceasefire in exchange for Hamas releasing kidnapped women and children. This man's grandson is among the hostages seized in the October 7th terror attack.
A kid of 4 years, for God's sake, save him. Let him go home now.
The White House says it's confident in its own intelligence. Hamas is using Gaza's biggest hospital as a command center and possibly a space to store weapons. But beyond the current crisis, President Biden says the conflict won't end until Israelis and Palestinians find a way to live side by side.
I can't tell you how long it's going to last, but I can tell you I don't think it ultimately ends until there's a two-state solution.
With the war in its 6th week, the State Department says it's in an active and ongoing conversation with Israel on how to protect civilians as it expands its military operations in Gaza. Skylar Henry, CBS News, Washington.
And all of the violence overseas is leading to violence here in the U.S. A protest for peace descended into violence in Washington last night. Police had to use pepper spray on demonstrators that were stationed outside of the headquarters of the Democratic National Committee. Now, the organizers say they were there to demand a ceasefire in the war between Israel and Hamas. Nicole Killiam has more.
Pro-Palestinian protesters blocked the entrance of the Democratic National Committee Wednesday night as officers tried pulling them away from the door. Several members of Congress were inside at the time. CBS News has learned that included the top 3 Democratic leaders in the House. California Congressman Brad Sherman was also there.
We heard the demonstrators outside. They disrupted us a bit. And then we were told we were in lockdown and would not be allowed to leave.
The lawmakers were evacuated as the violence escalated blocks from the Capitol, where House office buildings also went into lockdown. Capitol Police said about 150 people were illegally and violently protesting.
People getting thrown down the stairs.
The demonstration was organized by a coalition of groups. Some protesters blame police, many wearing riot gear for the violence.
I was shocked by the police, by seeing police officers throw protesters over the railing, over stairs, by macing them and pepper spraying them.
According to U.S. Capitol Police, 6 officers suffered minor injuries from being pepper sprayed, punched, and shoved. One person was arrested, accused of assaulting an officer.
Nicole Killian, CBS News, Washington.
In local news, a man was rushed to the hospital after he was stabbed and burned with an unknown liquid. It happened just before 4:30 this morning in the area of Halelena Place and Kahavai Street in Manoa. EMS says the 67-year-old man was wounded on his back with something sharp before he was doused with the unknown liquid. He is listed in serious condition. It is believed he had been fighting with another man. HPD is investigating the case as an aggravated assault. We'll bring you the latest on any details as they come in. The former Hawaii State Hospital patient accused of killing a nurse has been indicted and is being held without bail. Our cameras were there as Tommy Carvalho was transported yesterday from the police department to OCCC. That came just hours after a grand jury charged him with second-degree murder. The 25-year-old from Kauai allegedly stabbed nurse Justin Bautista to death in a transitional housing unit on Monday. Meanwhile, the family of Justin Bautista is asking for help paying for his funeral. Loved ones created a GoFundMe on which they described him as a gentle and kind soul with the biggest heart, who was a hard worker and sole provider for his growing family. Bautista was born and raised on Kauai, but was living on Oahu. The 29-year-old leaves behind his fiancée and a daughter who just turned 1. If you would like to help his ohana, you can find a link to the GoFundMe on our website. That's hawaiinewsnow.com. Also on Kauai, police are looking for Sateki Nisa after he allegedly stole a car at gunpoint Monday at Ahukini Landing in Lihue. He then fled from officers on foot yesterday on Kuhio Highway near Leho Drive. The 27-year-old is considered armed and dangerous. Police say you should not approach him, but instead call KPD with any tips. Well, the Washington Post is taking an unusual step by publishing some rather graphic images. Natalie Brand explains.
From Uvalde, Texas to Parkland, Florida, the pain and grief never goes away.
Each day we wake up and our son, our daughter, our spouse, our father are missing from our families.
Tony Montalto's daughter Gina was killed in the massacre at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in 2018.
I think it's important to find a way to keep the discussion going.
Thursday, the Washington Post published Terror on Repeat, using graphic photos from mass shootings involving AR-15s. The paper says there's public value in showing the images of the devastation, writing most Americans have no way to understand the full scope of an AR-15's destructive power. The piece is drawing mixed reaction from the families of those killed. Uvalde parent Brett Cross posted on social media, "While these photos are disturbing and truly shocking, it lets you see just a modicum of the scenes that constantly invade my thoughts and nightmares."
I disagree with the approach the Washington Post has taken, but that's my individual opinion.
Liz Dunning, whose mother was shot and killed as she answered her door, now advocates for gun violence prevention.
But the truth is that 70% of Americans are already in support of an assault weapons ban.
Solving this problem is not a one-dimensional approach. It takes all of us coming together.
A conversation families hope will lead to action. Natalie Brand, CBS News, Washington.
Lawmakers are looking into why millions of dollars in opioid settlement money isn't being spent. For more on this now, we welcome our Daryl Huff into the H&N Digital Center. Daryl, what can you tell us about this story?
Well, what came out at a House hearing just the other day was that about $20 million has already been received by the state. Now, the state has settled with opioid companies along with other states across the nation. Opioid distributors, opioid manufacturers have agreed to pay billions and billions of dollars to make up for the fact that they pushed these drugs on people, and we ended up in this overdose and addiction crisis. The state's share of that could be $84 million over the next, say, 17 or 18 years, and they've already got $20 million that has been sent to the state that's just sitting in the bank, and the lawmakers were upset. They learned that there was needs out there, people need seed money for projects, and just were not able to get it out of the state bureaucracy.
Now, what is the issue for the holdup?
Well, first of all, it is the state bureaucracy. And the other thing is that these settlements come with a lot of strings attached. So it has to be used for treatment. It has to be used for prevention. It can't just be used for any old drug problem. It has to be somehow associated with the opioids. So the state is being cautious about letting this money out, setting up programs, setting up committees to review the grant requests and so on. There was a Big Island official from the mayor's office there, though, that said he's already got a crisis where one person every 11 days is dying over there. He'd like to get a detox facility set up. He wants to expand drug treatment, counseling services out of UH Hilo. And he just needs a little bit of money to get these things rolling, and he just can't get them to approve the funds.
So it's clearly the counties that are awaiting this money. It's not necessarily individual families affected by a loved one who passed.
No.
What are some other ideas that the counties want this money for?
Well, to be clear, the counties get a certain amount automatically, but then also there's a very large amount of state money that the state controls, but it will go to county programs and to programs that are organized by county level drug treatment and interdiction organizations. So each county has its own committee trying to adjust to its own problems, and they will come to the state and ask for this money, usually in small amounts, to overcome a gap to get a program started so it can really justify full funding from the state or federal government later on.
How key or crucial will this money be, especially in light of Hawaii seeing rising fentanyl problems? How important is this to start getting that money flowing?
Well, that's kind of the point of this whole frustration, is that this money comes without the kind of strings that legislative money comes with. You don't have to wait for the legislature to provide it. It's right there, and theoretically it could speed up many programs that are ready to go or just need a little bit of bridge funding or a little seed funding. So it's more about dealing with the urgency of the situation, and that's why they're so frustrated, because the state doesn't seem quite that urgent.
And I guess the last question to you, I mean, what seems to be the only apparent next steps from here?
Well, the lawmakers are trying to put pressure on the state to come up with some kind of creative ways to release this money. And the legislature is coming up, so they might have to pass specific laws that allow for this money to move in a certain way, just to speed up things as much as they can.
Our Daryl Huff in the H&N Digital Center. Daryl, thanks for all your insight.
My pleasure.
Calls to Maui's only 24-hour domestic violence emergency hotline have more than doubled since the August 8th wildfires. Women Helping Women Maui operates the hotline. It reports that calls rose from 250 a month to more than 550. Those numbers have stabilized, but the agency says the calls are more dangerous.
What we are seeing now is more of the cases that are highly lethal. So, we're seeing more on the sex assault side, and a lot more DV and a lot more substance abuse and all of the things that come with being part of, a tragedy and a national incident.
The executive director also says there are more cases of what she calls secondary trauma, including depression and anxiety. Mental health experts say it's unfortunate but not surprising to see the increase and expect the need to continue for a while. We're now halfway through the first Native Hawaiian convention that's being held on Maui. Day 2 in Kahului featured speeches, breakout workshops, and panel discussions, including Lahaina's future and the fight over water.
77% of the water resources on the west side is controlled by private purveyors. The county only controls 23%. We got to do something about taking the water out of the hands of these private purveyors and putting them back into public hands.
Today's scheduled events include a panel discussion from all of the state's mayors. They'll be discussing affordable housing. There will also be a workshop for wildfire survivors to receive legal advice if they were denied FEMA assistance. Governor Josh Green and the state's director of tourism met with executives of 2 of Japan's major airlines in Tokyo this week. Of course, they discussed how to bring Japanese visitors back to the islands. Casey Lund and Ashley Nagaoka filed this report.
Aloha from Ginza. We're here in the thick of it, Ash. This is where commerce happens. There's so many shopping outlets. There's so many stores. This is where we're staying, and it's such a cool spot to be in. But when we talk about business and commerce, today was a really important day for the Hawaii delegation. The governor, of course, yesterday was meeting with politicians, earlier in the week, and then we had the Mana Up, that shopping experience at the Haneda Airport. But today was really focused on air travel specifically, right?
That's right. The Hawaii delegation, they met with Japan Airlines and ANA, 2 of Japan's major airlines with service to Hawaii. And they spoke with company executives about what is being done to bring more Japanese visitors to Hawaii. Japan Airlines, very interesting, they said they don't expect to see 2019 levels of visitors, at least on their planes, for another 2 years.
And a lot of that has to do with, it's the obvious, the yen, and that's not going to fix itself overnight, right?
Right. So a weak yen. Japanese also, they don't have a desire to travel right now. The Japanese government just recently in May dropped all COVID restrictions. So it hasn't been very long since the Japanese were allowed to travel internationally. They've been encouraged to travel domestically to support their economy here, but to go to places like Hawaii, which is their #1 destination, that has yet to be seen. So Jimmy Tokioka, he is the new director of DBET. He is here on this trip with a delegation. It's his first time to Japan. He doesn't enjoy flying, so he says that's why he's put it off, but he understands how important this market is to Hawaii, and that's why he's here. So we asked him about the recovery of Japanese visitors. Here's some of what he had to say.
We still know that the market from Japan, from Japanese people to Hawaii is down, and it's at 38% of where it was pre-pandemic. So we know we have a lot of work to do with that. We know we have a lot of work to do because the yen is not as strong as the dollar. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible. I know the governor's big initiatives in a lot of these meetings is to look at pre-clearance so that Japanese travelers don't have to wait as long as up to an hour and a half to 2 hours at Customs and Border Patrol when it's really, really busy. So that's something that we really think would be helpful to the visitors from Japan, and all of the companies, whether they were airlines or just businesses, really support that.
Again, we are so grateful to have the exclusive opportunity to be traveling with the governor and the delegation here in Japan. Our full coverage actually begins next week. We've got a lot to cover. In the meantime, though, as we mentioned, the yen.
Yes.
Very weak as the Japanese visitors wait for it to strengthen so it's more affordable to go to Hawaii. I hate to say it, Ash, it's kind of good for us here.
Yes, we've been encouraged to go shopping because the dollar goes a long way now. So, omiyage requests, guys?
Anything you guys want, we've got you covered, and I'll try to bring it all back, most of it back anyway.
It's a long flight.
It is.
Those Kit Kats might not
they
last.
Might not last, but we'll do our best. Anyway, signing off from Ginza in Tokyo, Japan.
Thank you guys so much. Yes, bring back as much food as you can. All the snacks and goodies from Japan are always so delicious. Let's send you live outside now. This is a look at the Statue of Liberty in New York. The sun just set a few minutes ago. This scene was bright orange and beautiful, but darkness has fallen there. Stay tuned. Right after this break, Guy Hagi will have a look at your island weather forecast.
The weather's actually calming down. However, the drought monitor has been updated today with very little change. Much of the state still hurting in either severe or extreme drought, especially here on Hawaii Island and on Maui. Those are the spots worse off. Wherever you see red, that means the brush fire threat is highest and the rainfall is minimal. And you can see all of Oahu, almost all of Oahu is under level 2 severe drought. And Kauai is actually the best off, although they still got severe drought for their leeward side. And there will be a little bit of drought relief for the next few days because today and tomorrow we'll have those scattered windward and Mauka showers, mainly falling in the overnight and early morning hours. Leeward sides will remain mostly dry. And the winds, brisk and breezy today, slowing down tomorrow. Even slower winds are due in over the weekend because a cold front's going to drop in, shift the winds first on Saturday. Saturday should still be relatively dry, but Saturday night into Sunday, that's when that cold front drops in. It's going to be cloudy and wet on Saturday, and then on Monday, things start to clear up again.
Now to an Investigate TV episode where reporters take a deep dive into how you can find unclaimed properties in your name.
We can all agree money doesn't grow on trees or fall from the sky, but your state might be holding on to unclaimed property with your name on it.
Yeah, according to the National Association of Unclaimed Property Administrators, during the 2022 fiscal year, states returned over $4 billion in unclaimed property.
While there's no single government database for it all, there is a free way to search in every state.
Here's an in-depth look.
I got a phone call one day.
I'm thinking, where in my past life did something like that occur?
These two Virginia residents have never met and live in different parts of the Commonwealth, but each got unexpected calls from the state's Treasury Department.
She said, I have been searching for you for weeks, trying to find you.
So I was convinced that probably wasn't real.
The calls were legitimate and they both paid off. Grosvenor Merle Smith discovered unclaimed money from an insurance policy he had in the 1980s, while Ashley Neville learned there was unclaimed money from her late mother's estate.
She also checked to see if my husband and I had any unclaimed money, and both of us did.
And they're not alone. According to the National Association of State Treasurers, 1 in 7 people in the U.S. have some form of unclaimed property waiting to be collected, whether it's an inactive checking account, utility refund, or security deposit.
Cash money with nowhere to go.
Each year, states recover unclaimed cash and assets from businesses, banks, landlords, and more after they cannot find the owner. Either
they change an address, they move, unfortunately they may pass away. For whatever reason, it's different time frames, but it ultimately gets turned over to us.
The most common type? Intangible unclaimed property such as uncashed paychecks and stocks.
We never know what we're going to open and what we're going to find once we go in those boxes.
But Chad Wright with the Alabama State Treasurer's Office explained safe deposit boxes can be turned over as well. These can include jewelry and coins, among other items.
A lot of times we'll have things that are, they may have handwritten notes where things have been passed down from generation to generation to generation.
What happens to that property after it's turned over to the state depends on where you live. Some states have programs that automatically look to return it, but you don't have to wait for a phone call to figure out if you have any unclaimed property. You can be your own investigator. Every state has a way to search. The National Association of Unclaimed Property Administrators runs unclaimed.org. There's a map so you can check the states you've lived in. You'll be redirected to each state's website where you can find a step-by-step guide on how to make an official claim for your property.
It is a free public service.
Diana Shaban with the Virginia Department of Treasury recommends you check the system at least once a year.
Check your names, check your loved ones' names, your deceased loved ones' names. Anybody can have unclaimed property.
The association says in most cases it takes only a few minutes to find out, and those who have reclaimed funds say it's worth a search.
What have you got to lose? So why not? And it was much easier than I thought it would be to find the information that the state requires.
The association also endorses missingmoney.com, and it's not just for individuals. Businesses, nonprofits, and churches can also have unclaimed property being held by the state.
Now in Hawaii, the unclaimed property pot exceeds hundreds of millions of dollars. That's money that should be distributed to its rightful owners. The good news is it's really easy to figure out if you're due some unclaimed cash. The state of Hawaii has its own unclaimed property program. We'll have a link on our website, but it's easy enough to find with a Google search. Head there and hit search now. Then it's just as simple as typing in your name and checking for results. If you do have unclaimed property, you can file a form to get it at no cost. What are some types of unclaimed property? It varies widely, but it can include things like deposits held by utility companies, dormant savings accounts, and even shares of stock. So get searching. Unclaimed property isn't unclaimed forever. If it's not claimed within a set period of time, the money goes into the state's coffers.
Time to check out some good news now. The pink water at Maui's Kealia Pond has turned the area into quite a visitor attraction. The National Wildlife Refuge tells us that over 11,000 people have headed there just this past weekend. The eye-popping pond has captured worldwide attention, with international media outlets covering the phenomenon. Right now, the water is still a vibrant pink, but the refuge warns that may change if the area gets some rain. Researchers believe drought conditions increased the salinity of the pond, and it turned pink as microbacteria began to thrive. UH is still working to complete DNA sequencing from samples. Well, I wanted to send you out to a live camera here in Hilo, but we're having some trouble with the camera. Oh, it popped up. As you can see, rainy conditions there are rolling in. I thank you all so much for watching this Hawaii News Now. This is Now live stream.